Hello, this is For the Record, a new series of conversations among the Archival Studies faculty of the University of the Philippines School of Library and Information Studies. In each episode, we look at issues and experiences with records in our everyday life. This is a very special episode as we celebrate International Archives Day. I'm Bono Olgado, and with me are my fellow full-time and faculty members. We have with us our Dean, Professor Mary Grace Golfo-Barcelona. Say hi.
Hi.
Professor Iyra Buenrostro-Cabbab.
Hi.
Professor Jonathan Isip.
Hello.
Our part-time faculties, the archivist for the Department of Foreign Affairs, it's Martin Julius Perez.
Hello.
And we're very lucky to have one of the pioneering archivists in the Philippines, former director, now retired, of the Congressional Library Bureau, and former president of the Society of Filipino Archivists, Ma'am Emma Ray. Hi, Ma'am Emma.
Hello.
So it's nice to see our full-time and part-time faculty members. Yung iba hindi po nakasama, but hopefully they're watching and celebrating with us. So again, I just want to greet everyone and a happy International Archives Day. So hello, Archivists.
International Archives Day. Okay.
So ano nga ba yung International Archives Day? Or I guess officially it's now called International Archives Week, and why do we celebrate it? Maybe Dean MG can talk more about it.
Actually, the International Archives Day started in 2009. I think that was the first celebration, but it was launched in 2007 during the annual general meeting ng International Council on Archives. Kasi they feel that the perception of the public or the image of the archives is foggy, unclear to the public. Akala nila kasi pang history lang ang archives. Or kung records man ito, para lang dun sa institution that the records were created for. So, parang na-feel ng executive board during that time na dapat meron din tayong International Archives Day to promote the profession about the archives. So they decided to launch the International Archives Day in 2007. And bakit June 9 ang napili nila? Because that was the day when International Council on Archives was created under the auspices of UNESCO. Ayun. Yun po yung pinagsimula ng International Archives Day.
Right. Thanks, Dean. I actually didn't know. I was about to ask, bakit nga ba siya June 9 sinet? So it's in celebration of the establishment of ICA. And following that, this special episode of For the Record, ang goal natin is to promote archives and the profession at large, have a conversation between all of us, archivists and archival studies scholars and educators at different stages of our career, and to exchange ideas and experiences and reflections about the profession in our community at large. So in line with the celebration, parang every year may theme na sinaset si ICA. And this year's theme is called Empowering Knowledge Societies. Tanungin ko lang si Martin, alam ko may official translation tayo ng International Archives Day in Filipino. Meron po nga ba?
Yes, I tried to actually there is no translation talaga, but I tried to translate it in a way na maintindihan ng lahat. So the International Archives Week this year is about empowering knowledge societies. In Filipino, it can be translated as pagpapalakas ng mga lipunan ng kaalaman. So masyadong malalim pa rin yung translation. Sana naiintindihan rin ng mga viewers natin. We understand knowledge society as a community of people with the ability to face information and to develop a reflective competence relating to multiple aspects of information, and that is according to a particular time and space. and with this ability to establish connection with other knowledge and use it every day. So examples of knowledge society would be those communities that rely on knowledge in the creation and in the use of knowledge, like communities, organization, or institution. So specifically, yung sub themes po ng ating International Archives Week theme for this year includes artificial intelligence, digital preservation, emerging technologies, sustainable knowledge, trust and evidence. So napakalawak ng scope po ng theme natin ngayon.
Right. Thanks a lot, Sir Martin. There's a lot to unpack dun sa theme na yon, and maybe future episodes of For the Records can go through each of those themes and discuss them in detail. For this special episode, simple lang, but at the same time, malalim ang gusto natin mangyari, which is really promote the profession and promote the archives and the needs of the archives by exchanging, as I mentioned earlier, our experiences. And I guess the best way to start this is to respond to the call of ICA in this year's celebration by using the hashtag an archive is. So, ang gusto kong mangyari, tatanungin po natin lahat ng ating guest participants for this special episode to fill in the sentence, an archive is, or in Filipino, ang sinupan ay. So let's start with, who wants to start?
Ako?
Sige, MG.
An archive is community memory.
Okay. Community memory. Nice. Ma'am Iyra? Wala nang explanation, diretso lang tayo.
Medyo may hugot lang ako, but yeah. So hashtag an archive is an open democratic space where different visions are realized in creating a just society for the future.
Ayan. So pahaba ng pahaba ang ating pahaba ang ating sentence. But may connect, right? From like community memory, and then Ma'am Iyra expands it into like community memory, and yet may tunggalian na nangyayari dito sa nagiging community memories siya, basically. Nathan?
Paiksiin uli natin. So, an archives is inclusive and crosses boundaries.
Right. And then gusto ko goal natin yan. It's to have inclusive archives that crosses boundaries. Even though archives in general are bound in different ways, shapes and forms. Martin?
Okay, an archive is our link to the past and our key to the future.
Oh, diba?
Magagandang ano yan, tweet na makikita ng followers ng at UPSLIS throughout this International Archives Week. And Ma'am Emma?
Archives are authentic recordings of social activities of mankind, and they are part of the world's cultural heritage.
Ayan, mic drop. So as we can see here, based on what we heard from all six, ako syempre hindi ako magbibigay ng sagot. But we can see that archive is defined, engaged with, perceived and conceptualized differently, diverse at multiple engagements at understanding natin sa archives. And I think a big part of that is our individual experiences as well as archivists. So kukunti lang po kaming mga archivists sa Pilipinas, kaya naman halos magkakakilala kaming lahat, and we have built this very strong ties with each other. But at the same time, usually when people ask me, they found out na parang, ay, archivist ka pala, Bono. They usually ask me a number of questions. Like one is like, ano ba talaga yung ginagawa ng isang archivist, right? But the even more interesting question is the question that goes, what made you become an archivist? And what is like one's professional journey? So siguro we can start with that. Si Ma'am Emma bilang pioneer ng archiving.
Yung
Sa mga
aking
pioneers. ng archiving profession, di ba? Parang sabi nga namin, in Ma'am Emma's shoulders, we proudly stand on. So, kayo, Ma'am Emma, what made you become an archivist po? How would you tell us your professional journey?
Siyempre, tulad ng marami siguro yung hindi planado, no? Nakasabay ko lang si Mrs. Montesa, Teresa Montesa, sabi niya, mag-apply ka sa Congress, no? So my first job as an archivist was in 1989. Tagal na, no? Sa House of Representatives, no? Congress was relatively new, bubukas lang, 1989, 1987 yung, no? Congress, no? So, kailangan, ayusin ng records, no? The records were as old as 1907, mga gano'n. Pag nag-change kasi ng government, ilalagay sa National Archives, tapos nung binuksan yung Congress, ibinalik na naman sa amin. So, track yun na dumating, no? So, kailangan ayusin yun, no? Nung una, as librarians, meron kang duda sa sarili mo. Tama na ba yung ginagawa mo? But the thing is, kung librarian ka, napaka-natural yung organization sa atin, no? So, kami doon, no? Nakalampas kami doon. And then, after that, meron mga dumating na mga trainings like, actually, my first training in archives administration was given by PAAR, no? Tapos ang sumunod doon yung si Dr. Gracie, State Archivist ng Texas, nagbigay ng training sa amin. And then dumating na yung mga international and local training. So doon kami na-mold as archivists. Unlike yung kayo ngayon na merong school, the School of Library and Information Studies na nag-o-offer na ng formal classes. Ayun.
Oh, thanks, Ma'am Emma. So one of the key things na sharing ni Ma'am Emma is this idea that happenstance and necessity, right? Like a lot of us, it's not as if we grew up thinking I'm going to be an archivist. But out of happenstance, we chance upon this particular profession, and out of necessity. Before I ask other people to share about their experiences, sino pa dito yung parang out of happenstance na naging archivist din?
Sabay ganun.
Sige. DMG, what is the circumstances that you stumbled upon in this profession?
Yeah. Halos pareho nung kay Ma'am Emma. I became a records officer because I was a librarian. Ayun. So yun yung aking naging ticket to enter yung archives, records management and archives profession. So naghahanap yung isang government corporation ng kanyang records officer. And isa sa requirement nila is for a librarian. A licensed librarian. Dapat lisensyado. Bakit? Because sabi nga ni Ma'am Emma, kilala tayong mga librarians na magaling mag-organize ng information. And another requirement nila noon, I remember, was meron kang 6 hours or 8 hours of training on organization of records or information. Meron ako noon with ASLP dahil naging officer ako ng ASLP for a while. Kasama ko noon sila Ma'am Belen, Dibar. So, yun. Ako ang kasama nilang bata na sumusunod sa kanila. So, yung mga training na yun, nakatulong ng malaki para sa librarians, and yet I was able to use it as my ticket to get the job as records manager in a government corporation. So, kung si Ma'am Emma nag-start noong 1989, ako nag-start 1998. O, di ba? Baligtad. 1998 po ako nag-start. I worked for 12 years. So, and I never regret entering records and archives profession. Yeah. It brought me where I am right now.
Yeah, thanks, Team MG. And so one of the common things between all five of you is that you all enter. It seems, outside from it being an happenstance, but it seems that most of you entered the profession with an identity as a librarian. Tama po
Librarian.
ba?
Yes.
Yes, that's true.
Which includes Martin, right?
Yes,
Ayan.
yes.
So after hearing from our two senior archivists, ikaw naman, Martin, with your relatively shorter career and yet very ano pa rin to, napaka-rich pa rin ng experience ni Martin being one of the key individuals who founded the archives of a national agency. So Martin, tell us more about how you ended up becoming an archivist.
Yeah. So, just like yung story po ni Ma'am Emma at saka ni Ma'am Grace, I'm also a librarian by training. So, by my education, I'm a graduate of BLIS. And then, actually, the interest for archives started in college. So, I took archives elective. So, maybe that's one of the best electives that, or maybe one of the best feature ng education ng SLIS, to offer archives as one of the tracks. So, just like sinabi nga po ni Ma'am Emma, wala pa talagang formal education ng archives dito sa Philippines. So, that's the nearest course na pwede mong kunin. So, hindi talaga iniisip na magiging archivist ako. But I just like doing archives. Ayun, yung things that is associated with archives. So after graduation, yung first job na tinanggap ako, actually ang hirap mag-apply ng trabaho pagka underboard ka and then UP graduate ka. Kasi sasabihin nila they might tell na aalis ka rin sa trabaho mo if bago ka lang. So, one of the part-time job na nag-accept po sa akin is a convent archive. So, it's the Santo Domingo Convent Archive. So, my first professional exposure to the archives world is at the Santo Domingo Convent Archive. So, I handled church records. Maikli lang po yung experience, but it's enriching and you actually put the theories into practice. Yun yung medyo na-realize ko when I do that. And then after passing the licensure examination, I decided to work for university, but as a librarian. Pero dun pa rin ako dinadala yung inclination ko sa related sa archive. So I ended up handling the rare books collection of the Far Eastern University at a certain point. And then I decided to work for the government and landed at the Foreign Service Institute. And at the process, I meet some people in the DFA who are trying to establish the DFA archives. And yung talagang nag-push sa akin na mag-proceed dun sa profession. Kasi it's not every day that you would encounter an organization or these people who are passionate to establish an archives after so long. Imagine, even without the permanent status of the job, even without the full benefits of a job, I decided to grab it because I know there's more things that I can learn from my experience in doing that. So I think that opportunity opened a lot of doors for me in the archives world, meet a lot of people, and being able to inspire more people to proceed with archives. So, yan po.
Grabe pala yung experience mo, Martin. You moved from an ecclesiastical archive to an academic archive to a government state archive. So, would you dare answer the question, which among these type of archives you enjoy working at the most?
I think being a UP graduate, I enjoyed mostly working with government records now because I think I put more reason or more meaning to these records for our individuality or for our identity as a Filipino. So parang kasi I think if you are working in any archives, you're putting the same effort. But if you are working in a government archives, the effort is beyond yourself. It's for the nation, it's for the country. So, parang meron kang sense of fulfillment dun sa pag-handle ng mga archives na ganun. So, yun po yun.
Ayan, tatak na UP na tatak na UP ang sagot ni Martin. Like parang what kind of archivists do we actually produce or form in UP? And we're very proud of individuals like Martin who came from our informal archives, so far informal archives program, and now is one of our part-time faculty members. Pero nabanggit ni Martin na parang one of the key things that he enjoys working at the DFA is the type of record that he works on day in and day out. So I guess we can kind of transition towards that because a lot of archivists, we are kind of almost defined or are strongly affiliated with the records that we work with. So then I want to ask, is there any particular record or archival object or collection that you have worked on that is personally memorable to you? Nathan, is there any particular record or collection that you've processed that stuck with you?
Yeah, they say you never forget your first, and I think my memorable collection will be the first collection I processed, and I believe that was under your guidance, Bono. It was the collection of photographs of a family of actors and actresses. And just seeing those three or four generations of actors and seeing their influence in Philippine film and Philippine cinema really stuck with me, looking at how, these people are long dead, but the memory, the contribution to Philippine cinema and film lives on. And seeing the photographs, seeing the behind the scenes in filming, seeing the personal family vacations, seeing how they balance celebrity life and personal life, really shows you the power of records in building identities and showing the formation of a person.
Syempre, we can't tell because Nathan and I both have non-disclosure agreement with the family. But yeah, Nathan worked on I think it was like close to 15,000 photographs.
Oh gosh,
that
yes.
they what did you do? I mean, like very briefly, what did you do with these 15,000 photographs that you worked on? I think in 10 weeks, right?
Yeah, 10 weeks, 15,000, I think it was 15,400 or around that number. And we were digitizing them in preparation for the creation of a documentary film about one of the actors in the family.
Yes, so this is Nathan's first project, and not only did he process a collection, he was actually credited in the documentary film. So you can accept that.
My first film credit, and it's not even under my name. I already have a stage name, Jonathan Pascual.
So if you look for Jonathan Pascual, that's actually Nathan Isip, who was part of making that documentary film possible. How about you, Martin? Like, what is an example of a record or collection that you worked on that shaped you as an archivist?
Okay. The collection that I would share is more recently. I mean, yung experience ko with this collection is more recently. Misunderstood by mostly, one of the tasks of an archivist is also to collect materials. So aside from processing materials, we do acquisition. So this collection that I'm pertaining to is the Carlos P. Romulo papers that is now housed in the DFA archives. So this collection for me is a homecoming. It has returned home. So when this record actually was shown to us or being presented to us, we discussed that it should go back to the DFA archives. And para sa akin, iba yung feeling, iba yung pakiramdam ng makabalik yung isang archives ng isang institution sa mismong institution for its use. And aside from this, sa tingin ko, this is also one of the collection that is the most well-preserved collection that we have now in the Philippines, both on the personal and official records of the Philippine foreign policy and relation and diplomacy that researchers can refer to in their research. So, malaki talaga yung epekto po niya when it comes to utilization ng researchers sa amin with the collection because of this. It is actually, my personal experience in dealing with this archive shows me the importance of archives in forming an identity of the nation and in nation building. Kasi marami siyang naibigay na context and na shed light na bagay in certain issues. Kasi the archives contains letters, correspondences, photos, and news clippings that discusses a lot about what is the status of Philippine foreign relations during that time.
So, Martin, is the collection fully processed yet? Are we all set, like finding aid and the whole shebang?
Yes po. The good thing about the collection, it was transferred to us in well-preserved format. So what we are doing right now is to have a more detailed finding aids to assist users in having access to the collection. So it's also digitized, so kulang na lang ng processing ng metadata, ng paglalagay sa isang document management system or information retrieval system. And then it's all set and can be used by our users.
Okay, so from a collection of a family celebrity to a statesman, I wonder, Iyra, Dr. Buenrostro-Cabbab, what would be a collection that has stuck with you?
Yeah. Hi. So I've been in this field for 14 years already as a teacher, training and teaching students and would-be archivists, and also current archivists to how to process their collection, how to physically put order to their collection. So for more than a decade, yun yung ginagawa ko eh. Nagtuturo ako paano process. But when it comes to the most memorable collection that I have processed or yung na-experience ko, it's not really about how I physically process them, but it's how I found out the context of this certain collection that's still not in the archives. So ito yung mga photographs of the freelance journalists during the martial law period up to the as a People Power Revolution in 1986. So it's part of my PhD project, and at first I just wanted to physically process them, but eventually I ended up contextualizing these photographs because I thought that what we've been teaching in the universities or in the archival schools is just all about how to physically process, how to put intellectual order to the records, how to make them accessible, how to preserve them, diba? But what I realized is that we lack contextualization. It's an area that's underexplored. So during the time that I was trying to reconstruct the narratives out of these materials, out of these photographs that are still not in the archives, ang bigat. The more exciting part of it is not just about the creation of the photos, but what happened to the subjects of these photos. So I also tried to find the subjects of these photographs, yung mga tao mismo sa photos, and then ask them about their stories. And what I found out is just so fascinating because our usual narrative of the survivors is always about the narrative of victimization, but we never ask them, do you want to be identified or to be known as such? So what I found out are really stories and narratives of survival, hope, their own advocacies post-dictatorship. So ang daming mga ganong narratives that are mostly not included in the archival description that we usually do. And these are still not yet part of the grand narrative about this particular historical era. So that's it. So it's very memorable until now. Andun pa rin, andito pa rin siya. And yeah, so much emotion, so much affective going on.
So follow-up ko lang you mentioned na a keyword that you use is mabigat. Mabigat yung collection. So what did you do to cope with or to handle this heaviness, yung kabigatan ng collection na ito?
Yeah. It takes a lot of emotional intelligence, I guess. And this is the thing about the archivist processing emotionally laden or emotionally heavy materials. No one ever asks about how we feel as archivists whenever we process materials like this. So I think we should write something about it. We should write a paper about it. So how we collect materials and how we deal with the emotional impact. So what I did was I tried to distance myself from the collection from time to time because I did oral history interviews and photo elicitation. So I show them the photos and then I use it as a trigger so that they can tell me more about the photos, about the context, about the political and social condition upon which these photographs were created. So and then after that, I would usually take some rest and then just continue doing the processing probably a day or two after. So the temporal distance is really important, especially for those archivists and even those doing historical research. It's really important for you to have some distance from your subject or from the collection you're processing.
Right, diba? It's interesting yung experience ni Iyra, wherein a lot of people perceive archival work as seemingly mundane, right? Like we fix papers, process them, catalog them, put them on folders, and so on and so forth. But your experiences, the three of you, right? Whether it's the handling the emotional weight of a particular record, or I would assume in the experience of Martin, figuring out the bureaucracy of how records move from like one institution to another institution, and the people that you have to negotiate and sometimes fight with, right? So that's a totally different skill set. Or in the case of Nathan, like just the immensity of like 15,000 photographs and you having to do the same things, process them on one hand over and over again, but at the same time noting that each object, each record is still different from the other. Really talks about the expanse of archival work, not only in terms of the variety of different archival materials that we contend with, but also the variety of like contexts and processes and power and infrastructure and skill sets that is necessary. Kaya naman, like this profession is very exciting for many. And I guess that's going to be my next question. Ma'am Emma, having been in the profession for decades, alam ko kahit retirado na si Ma'am Emma still teaches and is still raising generations after generations of archivists. And I think all three of Nathan, I would assume Dean MG as well, maybe. Iyra and Martin were all students of Ma'am Emma at one time or another. What made you stick? Like what about being an archivist that you enjoy the most, that made you just pursue and stick to this profession?
Okay. Kasi yung aking napasukan is the House of Representatives. And just like Martin, ang feeling mo, yung preserve mo yung records ng bansa. No? parang you preserve the records for the future generation. Parang ginagwardyahan mo actually, no? Prepare finding aids para mapadaling mapadaling research ng mga susunod ng mga generasyon. Parang ganoon perpetuating yung collective memory ng bansa, especially the House of Representatives. Ganon yung feeling mo. And maganda naman yung situation ng archives sa House of Representatives because talagang nakasulat sa rules of the House na meron talagang archive. So, well-placed ang archive sa institution. So, yung support is there. Saka, maganda naman yung opportunities na dumating sa amin.
Na-share na ni Ma'am Emma, what's the word for it? There's a gravitas to the work, right? There's something profoundly noble about the archiving profession, specifically if you work for, I guess in this case, if you work for the state, that you're talking about like national patrimony and cultural heritage.
When I started with the House of Representatives, ito yung yung in-establish siya ulit. Tapos yung mga records na kinuha ng National Archives, ibinalik, no? So, track yan na dumating. So, na-experience ko yung yung halos apakan mo yung record sa dami pag naghahanap ka, parang gano'n. And kailangang ayusin mo, no? So, yun ang naging trabaho namin. Ayusin talaga yung records ng house nung panahon na yun.
You know, that's one good indicator, Ma'am Emma, no? Parang I also experienced during my first, I think it was just my first week sa National Film Archives, and we visited a facility because they called us up. Sabi, "Uy, pwedeng i-pick up niyo yung mga films dito for para i-transfer daw sa Film Archives." And we went there. It was this open space on the top floor, and it was just piles and piles of films. And then it's a mixture of both yung sabi ni Iyra na bigat kasi na-realize mo, uy, ang tagal na napabayaan itong mga pelikulang ito. But at the same time, there's a certain sense of excitement na parang, oh, I'm going to organize this. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to find the living gems in this field of what seems to be rotting celluloid. But the image, katulad yung kay Ma'am Emma, yung image of parang track ng document. For me, that image of like piles and piles of celluloid film are images that I can never take out of my head and my heart as an archivist. Nathan, ikaw, what about the archive profession that made you pursue this so much so that you decided to take graduate education, your master's up in the UK, focusing on archiving? What made you do the leap and continue in this profession?
It's really talking about for one, it's partly a responsibility, seeing as we mentioned, we don't have a structured archival education program here in the Philippines, and I felt responsible in part to help in forming that program, being a faculty of the school. And at the same time, it's that consideration of heritage. One of the reasons I got into archives and records management in the first place was I originally wanted to do museum studies or curatorial studies, but I have no fine arts talent whatsoever. But the reason I wanted to do that was I saw how neglected, not considered, there wasn't that much attention being paid to cultural heritage or to local cultural heritage. And I wanted to help in raising that awareness. It's really all about that formation of our identity as Filipino archivists and seeing what does it mean to archive, not just for us as individuals, but also for the country at large. which is again a product of that UP education.
Ang sarap pakinggan talaga yung mga archivists. Kasi ang lalim ng hugot, 'di ba? Every time pag tinanong mo, because it's not as if we're getting paid a lot in this profession. Parang there must be a reason why you're doing this, and it's love for something. It's that sense of mission, whatever that mission is. And 'di ba, articulated differently by all six of us. Pero syempre, it will be remiss to say that everything is perfect in the archiving world, especially for ours here in the Philippines, wherein one can argue that the profession is relatively young. So the flip side of which then is like, are there any challenging or frustrating thing about being an archivist or about the archives profession locally here in the Philippines? Iyra, ikaw bilang as an educator and you're someone who both engages with archives and archivists, but at the same time distancing yourself to properly study it. Like, what are these challenges and frustrations that you can see?
There is a lot, actually. Well, probably the first one would be, well, here in the Philippines, but not just in the Philippines, but I think it's a regional or a universal thing. There's still not much awareness about the importance of records and archives and the things that we do and we can do as archivists. Because until now, I mean, come on, guys, anong petsa na, no? People are still thinking that, okay, you're an archivist, you can just file it, or I'll just give you like tons of boxes and then ikaw na bahala na maghanap o maghalo ka. No? Well, obviously, we get really excited when we're being presented with boxes and boxes of records. Like, whoa, it's a wonderland, no? I know that you have that kind of excitement, right? You're seeing old records, smelling them, touching them, feeling them. Well, that's fine. But then again, the problem really lies on the lack of awareness and lack of support from probably from the government or from the community itself, or even the related communities, that we can do this and we can do so much. No, we can do a lot of things other than just physically processing old records. So I think that's one of my frustrations. The other one would be not really a frustration, but more of a challenge because, again, like what Nathan said, there's a bit of pressure on our part, especially in UP, because we're offering this archival studies courses, yet we still do not have a formal education or formal degree for archival studies. So for many years, I have been receiving questions regarding, oh, when are you going to offer a separate degree? Or when are you going to offer a PhD? Wow. Di ba? Parang, okay. And I couldn't tell them, you know what? When I started teaching, I was the only full-time faculty teaching archival studies. And thanks to Ma'am Emma and to Ma'am Yoli and other practicing and part-time faculty members who helped us build the archives track. So, and now that's why I am really happy to see that we have an increasing number of individuals in our field who are very much interested to finally teach this course and to build a separate program for the archival studies. So I think having this kind of education, a formal degree, that would help raise awareness so that we can finally cement our position in this society. Like, okay, we can do a lot for our heritage, for our history, for government transparency, etc., etc. So worst, and at the same time, I see them as challenges which we can, I think we should confront and overcome.
You're right, and this is why annual celebrations such as International Archives Day is important, diba? Parang we want the general public to have a better understanding of what we do. But it's also like annually sometimes, because sometimes archivists, we enjoy talking to each other and engaging with each other, but we might not have the time or what do you call this? Just to take a beat and realize na naiintindihan ba talaga tayo ng general public, or tayo lang yung nag-uusap within our own silos. So technically, the International Archives Day is an advocacy mechanism, not for the profession, but for the general public to understand what the profession is, what our archives are, and what are the role and value of archives and records in society. But you did mention something, Iyra, which is like to be able to address some of these concerns and some of these frustrations. Is one possible way is by strengthening and establishing archival education in the Philippines. And madalas na pasadahan natin ngayong in this particular episode that yung background natin, tayo ay galing, lahat kayo, at kayo ay graduate ng UPSLIS. So maybe Dean MG, I know like one of the key goals of our new dean, si Dean MG, upon taking this role a few months ago, was to really strengthen the archival education in the SLIS program. So Dean MG, nasa na nga po ba tayo at ano yung mga plano natin sa UPSLIS when it comes to archives and records management education?
Yep. You're right, Bono. Ito yung number 1 sa listahan ko ng dapat na ma-accomplish being archives professor in SLIS. So, talagang ito yung ating tututukan ngayon. And ano na nga ba ang estado ng ating proposed program? Actually po, nasa final stage na eh. Konting revisions na lang and we'll be ready to present it and propose it to the executive committee para ma-approve po ito. But of course, it will entail a review, several layers of review after we submit it. So hopefully, we can submit it by this year. Based dun sa naging discussion natin last year sa Ilocos, remember when we had this planning session and we identified the subjects or courses that we want to be included in the program. So we went beyond dun sa traditional courses, yung pagtuturo ng mga practices na dapat na matutunan, mga skills na dapat matutunan ng isang archivist. We wanted something more. Sabi nga, yung hugot ng taga-UP, ipinasok natin para makita nila yung tatak UP at tatak ng Pilipinas. So, to make it more Filipino, sabi nga, para makita nila what we have, what Filipino archivists have here in our country, in the Philippines. So yun po yung gusto natin. And hopefully we can submit the proposal before the end of this year. And sana, I'm crossing my fingers kahit po may COVID, may offer natin siya next year.
Next year, ma'am. So ang goal po natin ay August, September 2021.
Yes, around that time. Yeah.
Our first cohort.
Hopefully, guys, with your support.
So for everyone who's interested, at maraming interesado, parang ilang taon na, if not decades na naghahanap ang mga tao ng master's program po ang i-offer natin, Ma'am MG, Dean MG.
Yes.
On
it is a
art
master's program. Oh.
And ano po pangalan ng program? MA in Archival Studies. Ayan. Yeah. So more information to come in the succeeding months. And ayun nga, sana by next year may offer na natin. And with that, maraming ang interesado na maging archivist. So I guess I just want to ask a few of you, what would you say to someone who wants to become an archivist? May mga bago po tayong UPCAT passers at BLIS passers. Maraming mga hopefully there will be individuals who are listening here, kahit yung mga kasamahan na po nating practicing librarian na gustong mag-expand into new professions, or kahit hindi sila librarian, di ba? Parang they're very passionate about film or history or what have you. Ano po yung pwede nating sabihin sa kanila? What would you say to someone who wants to become an archivist? Martin, ikaw, marami ka ng mga junior staff under you. What would you tell people who are interested?
I would just encourage them, just be an archivist. Join us in this noble profession and in supporting this grand mission of saving for the future generation. There are more that you can discover throughout the way by being just an archivist. There are a lot of opportunities, challenges, and even discoveries that would be uncovered on your way. So join us and discover more.
Yan, ang ganda ng ad.
Pwede
pang commercial. Of course, we'll be remiss if you don't hear the words of Ma'am Emma, who has inspired and continues to inspire most of us in the archiving profession. Ma'am Emma, what would you say to someone who wants to become an archivist and join us in this community?
Go lang sila. No? Actually, frustration ko din yun na konti yung sumusunod sa tapak natin. No? Andyan kayo, but sa totality, konti pa lang. No? At my age, kuminsan may mga, sana hindi na ako ang nagle-lecture niyan o nagtuturo niyan. Sana somebody na. No? There are projects na kuminsan natatanggihan ko because wala akong time. No? But para sa mga bagong kukuha ng archives courses, yung field mukhang open pa, di ba? Open pa. And marami namang institutions, private and government, na nare-realize na nila yung pagsisinop ng kanilang records. And we know of many graduates sa UPSLIS na nasa archiving or records management ngayon. And we have also graduates na na-employ internationally. No? Meron tayong si Mrs. Montesa, nag-work sa IMF, and we have yung religious na archivist ng Vatican, etc. No? So, kumuha lang sila ng kurso.
Thanks, Ma'am Emma. For the rest of, ayun na, may challenge si Ma'am Emma. Maghanap na daw tayo ng iba pang faculty. Kukunti lang po kami. But the the Archival Studies program of UPSLIS won't be possible talaga without our very generous part-time faculty who's been there. There were times wherein mas outnumber pa ang full-time faculty ng may time na sa Iyra lang ang archives faculty, full-time archives faculty sa SLIS. So, yun naman yung commitment ng school, is to serve the profession both in terms of our extension services. If you need consulting services for your archives needs and records management needs, feel free to get in touch.
We're here.
At the same time, continue to form and develop a generation of Filipino archivists na may very specific tatak, what we consider a tatak UP of honor and excellence in service to country. Dean MG, Ma'am Iyra, Nathan, do you want to say anything else before I close with a short line from I?
Yeah.
Pero paano ko ba sasabihin? It's really difficult to make this field, this course, sexy, no? Sexy para sa mga younger generations. Because, for the younger generations, they don't care about these things. They think that this field, this course is for old people. No? So, iniisip nila, this is boring, this is too dusty, this is not exciting at all. But, you know what, guys? This is such a cool profession. It's fun to be an archivist, and do not be afraid to take on the challenge and responsibility to be someone who would be a mediator of mediator of memories, mediator of history, and something that would build someone who would build something for the future. So do not be afraid to take on the challenge, to take on that responsibility of becoming an archivist. So masaya, and I hope that with this episode, you will be encouraged, or probably many of you there watching are still thinking, what would I like to be when I grow up? No? So parang ganon. So I hope that you will seriously consider this field, the field of archiving.
Yeah. So I will end by reading an excerpt from one of my favorite pieces, advocacy pieces on the archives, which actually echoes and touches on a number of the things and sentiments na in-express natin sa episode na to. So this is a loose translation of John Fleckner, who used to be the former president of the Society of American Archivists. He gave this speech during the 54th annual meeting of SAA back in 1990. Ito po ay isang loose translation in Filipino at aming contribution sa International Archives Week. At ito po ay sentimiento ng UPSLIS Archival Studies faculty. And it reads, patuloy kaming namamangha sa kalakhan ng ambisyon at responsibilidad ng ating propesyon sa kabila ng kaliitan ng ating bilang. Sapagkat hindi tayo nag-iisa. Katuwang sa pagtugon ng ating mga adhikain ay ang mas malawak na komunidad na siya rin nating kinabibilangan. Ang ating mga kaalyado ay ang lahat ng nagpupumilit na maunawaan at protektahan ang nakaraan para sa kapakinabangan ng hinaharap. Sa ganitong malawak na pananaw, kasapi natin ang lahat ng mga nagpapanatili ng kultura sa material nitong anyo. Kasamahan din natin ang mga propesyon na patuloy na nagiging tapat sa integridad ng nakaraan sa kanilang interpretasyon nito. Ito ang kagalakang kaakibat ng pagsisinop. Kasabay ng pagkakaroon ng natatanging kasanayan ay ang pakikilahok sa pinakamalalim at pinakamakataong gawain, ang maunawaan at pangalagaan ang nakaraan sa ngalan ng hinaharap. Ito ang aming propesyon. Isang propesyong may paninindigan, bukas palad at magiliw, at may malalim na pagsasamahan. Kami ay umaasang malalampasan ng propesyon ang mga hidwaan, mayakap nito ang lahat na nagmamalasakit sa mga record ng kasaysayan, mailarawan natin ang interes ng publiko sa pagpapanatili ng talaan, at madagdagan natin ang pag-unawa at suporta ng publiko para sa mga adhikain ito. Inaanyayahan namin kayong lahat, na makabilang sa propesyong ito, makibahagi sa aming mga adhikain at matuklasan ang kahulugan ng aming mga gawain. Naghihintay sa inyo ang isang komunidad na puno ng pagkikipagkaibigan at kagalakan. Maasa kaming makikilahok kayo sa pagtahak sa landas na ito. Happy International Archives Day to everyone. Thank you again to Nathan Isip, Dean MG, Dr. Iyra Buenrostro-Cabbab, Martin Julius Perez, and the one and only Ma'am MRA. I'm Bono Olgado, and this has been For the Record. For the Record is brought to you by UPSLIS. Find out more about the school on our website at upslis.info. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe our channel for more fun conversations on archives and records. See you soon.